Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Wednesday. It is April 14th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And what looked like was going to be another tight range day that might try to push higher, finally reversed, and we sold off some. We were way overdue for probably some kind of correction. So no surprise really, although I've been expecting this for several days. You just never know how long a rally is going to last, and they'll always, or I shouldn't say always, but they can and usually will go much further than you expect them to, and that's no different. This one went. I think on our daily chart we had a target of like 41.11 or something, and we've traded as high as, I mean, we got as high as 41.40 something here today, and I believe that's the high. Yeah, we made another all-time high today before selling off. So um, I think we've been overdue for a correction, and this is not much of a correction really. We're still above 4,100, so we'll just have to see if the sell-off continues, or if we'll rally from here. We'll just have to see. I would expect we'd probably try to retest this high. We'll see. Anyway, we were mostly sideways. We had a little failed breakout here. Once we broke out the high side and kind of stayed up here, you'd have two targets. One would be this leg. You look for a measured leg similar to that, and you can see we came nowhere near that. And then you would look for an equal distance of the range, and we came nowhere near that either. So when we couldn't reach those two targets and started down, that's a strong indication that we're probably going to trade much further in the other direction. That's generally what that will mean. And so there was a couple of ways to look at the downside. Measure, you could measure from here, but this really looks like the leg here. So measure from there to there and down to here. You can see we went well past that. And then again, measure the range. And I actually measured the highs to the lows this time, where you had most of the highs and lows. And you come down here, and that gets us right about where we trade. We actually traded a little past that, but that was kind of the low point where we've started to find support, and we bounced out of there. So that would be the two targets to the downside, the two to the upside, and we surpassed the ones to the downside, and we couldn't make the ones to the upside. So that left us a downward bias as the afternoon progressed. So, and that's a pretty good sell-off right there. And unfortunately, there wasn't a real good way to get in that. I don't think you want to enter right here. Uh, I didn't mark this green. You could actually take this trade. I didn't mark it. But other than that, there was no way to really get in this trade. We just kind of went sideways here, no setup there. And then on the bounce, there's not really a setup to come back either. So it did give you a couple of good buys here late in the afternoon. But this was kind of tough to watch this movement here and not really get a chance to enter it. So unfortunately, it happens like that sometimes. But a good trader will sit there and wait on things to happen. So hopefully, because the next time you try to take one of these, you try to take one in the middle of the range like this on just a first entry, and you'll get burned. So you got to stay disciplined, and sometimes being disciplined means you miss good moves. But if there wasn't a setup, then you still did the right thing. So just keep that in mind. Don't beat yourself up if you miss these moves. That's what happens. You miss these moves, you beat yourself up, and you think, next time I'm getting in that trade, and the next time it doesn't do the same thing, and you didn't follow the rules, and you end up paying for it. Unfortunately, that's what happens. So anyway, let's talk about the trades. 7 o'clock came right in here as we're making this round and coming back up. It's I forget exactly where 7 o'clock was. Let's just look at it here. Yeah, right. Just as you're making that turn and coming back up, just as you make those highs, you hit the 7 o'clock. So this set up really right at 7 o'clock. So anyway, we had this high, and we came back, and there's just a range here, and it's really, you can look at it as a two-tiered range, or maybe that we just moved into the upper range. But anyway, you're just selling the highs. Nice signal bar there. It's just a first entry short, but we've tried to go high multiple times here, and it's a lower high Big signal bar. I marked it green because there is some congestion there, and it is close to the EMA. So you might have waited to see if you got another test up here, but you wouldn't have. So if you didn't take that trade, you would have missed this. Runs down, you get a break and a couple of legs down to a new low. There's actually a second entry short right there, but I wouldn't go short after we just bounced off those lows. It's a little bit of a trap, and there's probably room to get out, but I would wait. I'd be thinking long down here, and sure enough, you get that next touch right there. And so now you got a double test of this price level that we've bounced at multiple times. You're a little ways from the EMA. This is also a second entry long because you could look at that as a double top. So first entry, second entry. So there's a little two legs down there. This is the trade of the day. You're just hoping to get a scalp at a minimum, but this thing rockets out of here and goes straight back to the top. And so if you catch this one trade, you get a runner and you get an easy scalp, and you're probably done for the day. That's the kind of trades we like to find. Of course, you get up here at the top, and you get a break and a new high, and you don't get a trigger. We actually break out here and go higher. So you got to be careful. You don't want to go long up here, but you got to be careful going short because you don't want to try to take one of these. It never actually triggers here until up here. You get a break and you really get two legs up. And so you might have thought about being aggressive on that one, but that's a high of the day. So generally you want to wait on a lower high, which comes here. And you can't enter there. There's no signal bar. It's just a doji. And then your next attempt, no set up again. And then again, you're just going sideways here. But finally, you push lower, pull back, and you get a failed second entry long there. Notice that double top. So first entry, second entry. And you got a little channel working down, so that's the first break. I like that one. And you might have even thought about going long. It was tempting to going long here with the next bounce, but we're working down, and you just made a new low, so I'd wait on a higher low, especially with that looking congestive right there and not really being rejection. And sure enough, it goes down another leg before it bounces. And you don't really get a chance to get in this one back to the high side. And turns down, and again, no setup, rockets down, turns up. There is a higher low here, and you could argue for that to be green. I didn't mark it because we didn't pull back and test the support resistance line where we've always been turning on each side. It's a little high, it's congestive, so it could break higher, and it looks like one leg down there, so it could break higher and trap you and make a second leg down. Instead, it makes a second leg up here and then turns down. So it's just hard to know what prices are really doing. So you've gone into a tighter range up here between this line and the former resistance acting as support now. And this is like right in the middle, is congestive. We should be going back to the highs, but it's just not real clear. So again, you could argue for that one to be green. I would skip it because it works this time, but it may not work the next time. It's aggressive. So, and then we break out up here again. Again, no setups. You come down here and you get this second entry long right off the support that fails pretty quickly and turns down. I like going short right there. That's a nice long trap, and we're probably going to trade back into the range. Sure enough, we do. You come back and test it once, and then you turn down and you come back and test it again, and then you come back and make a lower high right there. And that's a second entry short, nice bearish bar. With those multiple tests across there, several tests, being back in the range and a second entry short. And that's the first break of this channel, or first close outside. So I like going short there. There's a lower high here, but the fact that we didn't take on off there kind of steers me away from that one. It is sideways there, but that's not technically congestion because you don't have the small no body bar. It's just some up down bars there, and the bias is down. So you could look at that as another attempt to go higher that fails and probably traps people. But with those 3-bar matching highs that didn't break through, if it does go through, it's probably going to drop. So that's another one you could argue, hey, I'm going to trade, I might want to be a little aggressive and put my sell stop there. And if it breaks through, I'll probably get a scalp at least. And you can see it would have been an easy scalp, but it bounces real quickly. Then you get a first entry short and then a second entry short that fails, and it confirms that trend line. So I like that back to the upside. As long as you got room to get out before back to here, I like that trade, just simply because it's a bit of a trap. I wouldn't enter on this next dip lower because you don't have much room, and you see it didn't go very far before it's turning back down again. And then we bounce once, and then we bounce twice here. I did mark this one short just because it's a lower high, and we did push a little lower here. So this doesn't really look like a range yet. So this just looks like a lower high. So you may take that trade, this lower high off the high of the range, because you would think prices are going to come down here at some point. But this is just not a great setup. It's right into the EMA as well. Of course, we don't worry about that as much when it's going sideways like that, but it's still something to think about. And of course, we bounce down here again, but notice how we're making a lower low. So that leads me to say, hey, you better wait for a higher low. And of course, it just runs back up. And then finally, you get a double test. You made that high, you test it once, you test it twice. It's a second entry short off the highs. That's a good setup. It's a quick move back down. And then now you get that higher low, and you don't see that congestion or prices hanging around. They just kind of break higher and start moving higher. So I like going long right there on that trade. And it runs back up. You try to go higher once, twice. So you got a double test there, and this actually breaks higher and turns down. You could go short right there, one tick below that. I don't know if I would wait and go short way down here. I marked it, but I'm thinking as the engulfing bar on the failed breakout that we're probably going to turn back down, and that's what happens. And then we push back inside the range. You get two legs back up, so a second entry short right off the resistance. Nice signal bar. And finally it drops on down. Here you get a first entry, and you never really get another second entry here. You still might have entered off that. I think I talked about that at the beginning. It's a little. The problem is you've still got this range going on, which is the upper side of the blue range, and it looks like that we're just in a tighter range now. And so this is like a failed breakout. So you're going short right into support right there, and I just don't think it's safe. And you notice how it takes it a little bit, and it actually comes back and tests it there before it drops. So I just don't think you get a good chance to enter that trade. You've already got two legs down there. So on a bigger picture, you could look at this, hey, maybe this is a trap, a failed second entry. There's some reasons to argue for maybe entering there, but I just think it's too risky. I didn't even mark it green. So it'd be very advanced if you entered there, and you're still being very aggressive and taking a big chance. It's not a high probability trade. It turns out to look like one, but it's not. And then you're just kind of chopping sideways. I don't see any entries there. No way to get in that trade. And then we bounce and come right out of there. So, and again, you don't really get a good, this is pretty strong move down here now. So you don't want to be trying to buy any lows or anything like that. And actually, I think this line is a little bit lower because this is probably your midline coming back to test it. And so it looks like that's the very low. And now the midline tends to fit a little better there. So I think it's all the way down here instead of the closes like you would usually expect it to be. There is a higher low here, but again, it's not really bouncing out of there. You know, this is just an engulfing bar. It does break lower first and then turn up. I just don't, you know, that's the first break of that channel. I just don't see any reason to go long there. And then, of course, we come back up. We test that trend line again. It holds. Unfortunately, you could look at this as two legs up, but that's not a very good signal bar. It's just a doji, really. There's only like, something's wrong with my mouse here. It's not giving me, I don't know what's going on with my chart. Something's wrong with my chart here. It's not giving me the prices. But anyway, I don't know how many ticks are in there because it's not giving me my little price, time and price box. But you make a lower high here, which I like entering because you're expecting this channel's holding. It's been confirmed now. Lower high, it breaks higher and fails. You could actually go short one tick below that, but I'd probably wait on this. Comes back and gives you this is technically not a failed second entry, but it's two legs back to the trend line again and gives you a little double top and a second entry short right there with a nice signal bar. And then now it's off to the races again. And that pretty much takes you into 2 o'clock. There is a failed second entry long there. It doesn't really look, it looks a little like two legs back. Not a great signal bar, but it doesn't really look like a failed second entry long, even though by the counts it is. So it being 2 o'clock that late in the day, I don't think I would take that trade right into the EMA like that. So anyway, that's what I saw today. There were quite a few trades early on, but really after lunch there was not a whole lot. There were these two late trades late this afternoon, and that was about it. Even though there's some really good movement down, there's just not a lot of opportunity to enter it safely using good strategy and good safe entries. So you won't see many marked there. I tend to like these range days like this. They're especially when you start to get consistent highs and lows. When you don't have consistent highs, that makes it a little harder and consistent lows. It definitely makes it harder. But when they start to get consistent, it gets easier. So that's what you want on ranges, is just consistent turns at the same price level every time. It makes it so much easier, and it's pretty easy trading. But when it starts to turn at different heights, and it's higher here, lower here, it's higher here and it's lower here, then it's higher here and lower here, and down here there's some fairly consistent turning it, and then it's not again, and that makes it harder. This one was fairly consistent except for the breakout right here. Otherwise it was fairly consistent, and that makes it a little easier. So, and that's why I don't like that trade there, because it's right into that fairly consistent support, and it could break lower and fail and turn straight up again. So it's just kind of hard to know that prices are going down this far. You do have the measured leg here to think about, but that didn't even come into play. It really just blew right through that. Notice how it came back to that and test that breakout area before it went lower again, and that's pretty standard. Prices are usually going to come back and test important areas. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. Tomorrow's Thursday. That'll wrap up our week. Note Charles lessons on Fridays. So one more day left in this week. They just keep flying by. So April will be over before you know it. But I'm going to wrap it up for today. We'll be back again tomorrow. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.